a very interesting panel, which is the RPA and CX panel discussion on automating processes for business continuity and CX. We're looking at RPA use cases across sectors, RPA-driven enhancement in COVID-19 testing, harnessing the power of AI-enhanced automation, predictive trends and personalization going from 1 click to 0 clicks, and using RPA bots to automate rule-based tasks and processes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got our panelists. First up, Mohammad CHARAFFEDINE, Senior Director, Head of Mobility Engineering, Infra, and Careem. With 10 plus years of experience in product management, Mr. CHARAFFEDINE possesses technical and product expertise in applied AI at scale using deep learning and reinforcement learning. We also have with us our panelists HESHAM SAAD, Director, Digital Transformation, Abdul, Latif, Jameel. HESHAM is the Digital Innovations Director that leads and driving collaboration and alignment across various business units to cultivate and speed the pace of digitalization and AI. We also have joining us KHALED SALEM, Head of Automation, Bank Al-Jazira. Mr. KHALED possesses over 11 years of experience in technology fields and has graduated from positions such as application scientist, system analyst, head of IT infrastructure, IT budgeting before moving to the head of automation. Well, we also have our panelists IMRAN, NASEEM, Head of IT, GCC, Hikma, Pharmaceuticals, a senior IT professional with 22 plus years of experience in the field of GRC and business automation, mainly in the health sector. IMRAN leads all the automation and IT compliance initiatives, including industry best practices and standards. Major role includes strategically aligning IT with business, automating business processes, establishing IT government infra framework, consistently meeting over growing IT compliance standards, especially in pharma industry. And this entire panel is going to be moderated by Mohammad Shalan, the Director of Digital Transformation at Project Management Institute, Saudi chapter. While a multidisciplined, motivated business technology interpreter who's focused on digital transformation, Industry 4.0, smart cities, and innovative contracts. He's a practitioner, author, guest speaker, and a researcher with published chapters, articles, and presentation. Holding master's degree in telecommunication engineering and 9 professional certification. He's worked out major operational assignments, portfolios, programs, and projects spanning in more than 50 countries and worth more than $50 million US. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, now it is time to get the entire panel on your stage. Thank you so much for joining us today at the World AI Show.
Okay, thank you very much, actually, and thank you for allowing this opportunity to discuss this very important topic. As we know today, actually, employees spend a lot of time working on works that's very regular and can be automated. And in case we are automating this kind of business, we will be saving a lot of millions and a good time actually from the workers' time. And here actually we have a lot of experts who are talking and have real case studies and real scenarios implemented in their companies. So we will be targeting how we will run an RPA project, what are the benefits of such a project, and how to prioritize which activities to be motivate or is good for the RPA, and then how to calculate the ROI and all this kind of stuff. So first of all, I will start with Mohammad CHARAFFEDINE, and I need from you actually to tell us about how you think we should go into the AI itself. And there is a lot of AI tools like machine learning, like RPA, like CX tools, a lot of tools. So how we can select the proper tool for RPA or the proper process for the RPA. So can you give us a clue about this, Mohammad?
Thank you, Mohammed. A pleasure to be part of this panel. Let me just start with the RPA definition, which is robotic process automation. If I can reflect on how this started with software eating the world, a lot of the businesses needed to be digital and needs to transform and become software companies. A lot of that comes with the process automation, business process automation, a lot of tasks that the agent or the employee have to do. Typically, in the past, you had multiple providers of software, multiple tools, and some big companies, big enterprise companies would have a soup of tools at their disposals. And for an agent, the agent would have to, let's say, if we take customer support, for instance, the agent would have to deal with maybe 10 tools, if not more. And a lot of the work involved is copy pasting, clicking. There's a lot of mundane, sometimes labor work that can be automated. This is how RPA started, which is to automate the human glue between applications and to save time and productivity for the workforce. So it started, if you think about it, automating the front end. So it was a software tool to automate the front end. If we look at how the enterprise software evolved, over the past 10 years, a lot of the technology happened on big data and a lot on a data lake, data warehousing, big data platform, ingesting data, handling data at scale, API, making multiple tools talk to each other, microservices architecture. So there's a lot of communication and automation that can happen on the back end. Once you start automating on the back end, then there is little need to start automating on the front end, if you had the capacity to do that. So the RPA application that we see right now are situations where automating the back end can be expensive because of legacy, because of the total cost of change. The RPA in certain situations is profitable, is a positive ROI case to automate front-end use cases, because automating the back end or some of the tools, especially if you are not developing the tools or the developer is not there, it makes sense. In our case at Careem, we have some cases, especially on the customer support, on the care side, where we have multiple tools that the care agent has to interact with. Some of those, an RPA can play a role, which we did a business case, and we saw a positive business case. But then we thought, let's think about this differently. We have this data, let's try to automate on the back end, which is what we've done. And automating on the back end give us a lot of freedom in not repurposing a human-designed interface, what RPA does, but we could do more and push the envelope more, especially on the resolution side, where I could take into account in the resolution the customer lifetime value, the churn probability of the customer, and I could take risk factor of that transaction. So I could take multiple things into account. I could ingest thousands of data, and my decision tree can be traversed, can be much more complicated than a simple decision tree or a standard operating procedure that the agent has to go through. So this is one use case how, if you think about RPA journey, automating the front end, you could also automate on the back end if you have the luxury to do so. And if you do so, you could be much more sophisticated to improve the customer experience.
Okay, great. So let's go to Mr. HESHAM actually. Mr. HESHAM, you have implemented several activities actually on RPA and Abdul, Latif, Jameel. And so how you prioritize these, and what are the activities that you have planned, how you plan these activities? So tell us some stories about from the actual life. What have you done?
Yes, thank you, Mohammad, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wa sallallahu ala Nabi Mohammad. Thank you for all being here today in such a very highly esteemed summit. I think AI is really one of the most critical, highlighted initiatives these days, and has potential improvement to internal resources and external resources as well. So we started our journey with RPA. Now RPA is considered, as Mohammad expressed before, one of the AI top initiatives. And we probably think that RPA is more likely a fast and quick run initiative that can be implemented versus machine learning versus chatbot. So we started the RPA, the project, probably beginning of this year. Before that, the evaluation, we considered a couple of companies. We had what we call a proof of concept. So we tried some of these solutions in a very narrow environment to see how can they offer the solution dynamics that we need in our organization. So after evaluating a couple of these solutions, one key areas that you need to be aware about is thinking about how easy it integrates with your ecosystem and how fast the data can be with less integration challenges. So these are the key things we looked into. RPA in general is a macro or a software that runs based on AI. It will be executing repetitive tasks. So our example, probably we would like to share today. So we had a case that is called electricity bill. This is dealing with specifically the payments that we receive from various showrooms. And this is a good example that we implemented in probably about 2.5 months. So we received the electricity bill from Saudi electricity bill through email, and RPA reads these bills 24/7. So it's working day and night, weekends. And then it processes the information from what we call the recognition from the invoice itself. And some of the challenges we find is the Arabic language, but we overcame this. And then it moves this to the system that executes the payment. So this process is one example of a good RPA example. And this we really gained potential ROI. The second example is what we call HR organization change. Again, this is a highly repetitive task. It goes through the organization, different layers. It takes an average about a couple of weeks to execute this. With RPA, it took us only 1 day to really have a complete transaction. So these are good examples. We are also exploring the CX, customer experience in the call center. And we could recommend probably call center, HR, and finance. These are the potential area for RPA. Back to you, Mohammed.
You're on mute, Mohammad.
So this is a very good example actually, because it's a real cases actually, and it has saved a lot of time and a lot of money, and it's very easy to sell this to the management, something like this, because you will get a good ROI from the beginning. So that's great actually. So Mr. Khaled, now let's talk about Bank Al-Jazira actually. Bank Al-Jazira, you are a very regulated and heavily regulated industry. And you have a lot of activities actually as a bank. You have a lot of activities, repetitive activities from check reading, a lot of activities. So what do you think about this, and what are the cases that you have implemented? And also I need to ask you actually how you choose the process to automate in the bank with this kind of a lot of regulations and a lot of processes as well.
طيب السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Good afternoon to everyone. I'm very proud and interesting to be part of this great summit. Directly to your question, Mohammed, that as you know, everyone, is the most important things before you do any automation is to selecting the high potential processes or the processes that are applicable to be automated through any technology. Automation is a part of investment from the organization, investment in terms of the cost, in terms of the time, in terms of also of the effort from the people. So there are few criteria where if it is applied on any process, so the automation, it will be very high potential, and it will be like a glory to be automated. The first thing is the role-based processes, that processes are not require any human judgment or human analysis. If there is a process that require human judgment, so it's okay, we can assign this task to the human in order to perform this task. However, this is like a checkpoints where if we minimize the human judgment as much as we can, that we could streamline the process up to the maximum. The second thing, which is the digital structure input, or the we can say the digitizing the process. Definitely, if we are digitizing the input, then the integration or the RPA automation, it could reach up to very high potential or very say, an excellent percentage of automation. The third thing is the clear business rule. Definitely, if there is a clear business rule, we can learn and we can educate the robot to deal with it. If there is no business rules, so we will spend a lot of time to first identifying the business rules, and then we will educate the robot to do this kind of automations. By saying that, we are not saying the other processes doesn't have any potential of automation. We could work to re-enhance, to re-engineer, to leveraging the automation percentage with doing some few tuning. And in some cases, it reached up to very accepted level of automations. Nonetheless, the discovery assessment in the bank, we have identified a lot of processes having a very potential, a very excellent percentage of automation. Some of them reach up to 100% of automations in finance, in call center, in our front exchange, Fawri sector, support, operation, credit card. Yeah, Mohammed, thank you.
Okay, so great actually, because yes, you have a lot of potential actually for RPA in the banks, because you have a lot of processes actually that can be automated, and maybe it's easy also in the bank to sell the idea to the business itself, because they are automating a lot of activities. So that's great. And that will move us to Mr. Imran actually. Mr. Imran, you are from the pharma industry, and pharma industry, maybe they have been reluctant for some time actually to utilize technology in everything, because sometimes they prefer manual processes. I think this is changing since the coronavirus, because the COVID-19, people start thinking different way. Some people are not in the office usually. So how you think, how it was from your side when you are planning an RPA, how you sell it to the management, and after and before COVID-19?
Thanks, Mohammad. Assalamu alaikum to everybody, and especially thanks to Trescon for arranging such a wonderful session. As you correctly pointed, pharma processes are highly human-driven. At every section of process, we need human intervention. And before COVID-19, it was less considered to be automated through RPA or through other AI tools. But I think following this COVID-19 situation, there is a paradigm shift, and it has been observed that processes should be automated, and human could be deployed only to supervise or for reinforcement-based learning. So we have seen a number of use cases where companies, pharma companies, health sectors have deployed RPA-based solutions in various aspects which are general to business, for example, invoice payment processing, or specific to pharma, for example, we have product submissions, clinical trial submissions, and so on. The process of implementing RPA or AI is still very new in pharma. There are companies, there are role players which are aggressively implementing and incorporating these technologies into pharma. And the basic point which was observed that pharma processes maturity level is very high because it's linked with human life. So the clinical trial, product submissions for regulatory authorities, the supply chain cycles, feedback collections from partners, healthcare professionals, stakeholders, doctors, patients, they all are well structured. So the maturity level of these processes in pharma are ripe with opportunities for role-based automation, that is RPA. And it can be coupled with AI-enabled learning curve. So we have seen a lot of vendors are there which are emerging, and some pharma companies even have implemented the AI-based model equipped with RPA in the sections of product submissions where we need the vaccinations to be submitted, and the whole process of approval should be followed in a very quick manner comparing to the legacy style of working. So we are having some processes which have started being automized, and in the same time, we are getting a good feedback on certain processes that we have automated. For example, a process in pharma, which is pharmacovigilance, where we are getting any adverse effect from a product should be documented and shared with all stakeholders, including regulatory authorities. So this process, we have identified it requires a lot of work in terms of collecting data from various systems and reporting it to regulatory authorities. So this sector, this specific process of pharmacovigilance in pharma sector is the one which we are also considering to automate.
Okay, great, very nice actually. And so this is COVID-19 has created a lot of opportunities actually for transformation, for digital activities, and a lot of people now is seeing digital as the opportunity actually. So it's a very good paradigm shift, and we are seeing it really in a lot of industries. What's good actually about this panel is that we have a lot of experts from different industries, and this will make it rich actually in real stories about what we are doing and how we are doing. One thing that is happening in innovation processes usually and in digital transformation is the contracting issue. How to select your vendor, how to write a contract with him, how you will manage the changes, because while you are progressing in your project, usually you will find a lot of things. So this is actually, sometimes it's a challenge. And also you need to avoid the look-in. For example, choosing a vendor, then you have the cost running up and up. So in this, we need to start with Mohammad Sharafuddin about how is your perspective and how are your dimensions that you are looking when you choose your provider, when you make a contract with him, when you start automating and finding a lot of challenges on the way. So how you handle this, Mohammad?
This is in the dimension of RPA, right, or AI?
Yes, of course. It's related to RPA and AI, exactly.
Yes. So in RPA, as I mentioned, we looked at the business case, and we chose because we built the software that the agents use, our care agent use. We decided to automate it ourselves with our engineers versus applying a solution, RPA solution. The decisions that factor into that was the cost element, the opportunity cost of doing nothing, which is kind of the status quo, the amount of engineering resources that we'll put on it, and also, which is the most important, is the need and tool fit. Is this really the need? Is this the tool that really fulfills our need? And when we looked at this, we saw that in automating this ourselves, it opens up more doors and options and opportunities for us than the classical RPA route. With this, we could have a much more sophisticated resolution. So the resolution decision tree, as I mentioned, rather than a very simple or basic SOP, it can be much more sophisticated and takes a multitude of data into account. And we could also experiment with different SOPs. So the policies themselves, we could also do A/B testing with them. And we ensured that the policies are also trust aware. So based on if it's a new customer or if it's a customer that we see a behavior that is questionable, the policy and the behavior is different. So by automating this on the back end, it gave us a lot of that flexibility that we found that going the RPA route will have benefit, but over the long term, that might not be kind of the true north that we'd like to get to.
Okay, great. But maybe other parts you have purchased some tools, and maybe you have automated the core of your business, but also maybe you have acquired a lot of other RPA tools for different things. So how you decide what to operate, and is you everything you are developing everything from scratch for yourself or for your team?
No. So in other general tools, we have a build versus buy framework, decision framework. And recently we added an adopt framework. Now that we became part of Uber, there's that element. Can we adopt the technology that is already present in Uber? So in the build versus buy, the same high-level dimensions apply. Is the urgency of the situation, of the need, the cost, the opportunity cost, the total cost of ownership, any lock-in mechanism. Is the market, the vendor is a monopolist, kind of a monopoly market, which we feel that we will pay a premium based on that. And if it's a build decision, is there an open source tools already out there that we can benefit from and build on top? Do they fit our need? If they don't, can we build on top of that to cover our needs? And we have one use case where we wanted to do services monitoring for our microservices. We used a tool 2 to 3 years ago, and the decision was because of the need and the criticality, we decided to buy, and the price justified it. Over the past few years, because of the lock-in process and given the integration cost that you put, that you invest to have the tool in place and operationalize the tool, the cost kept going up year over year. And this year would have been multi-million-dollar. And then we decided proactively that, let's take the open source tools, let's build a system around them and operate this tool, build this system internally, which we've done. But that decision, we had some lead time to build the tool. And even the cost that we invested to build it ourselves justified from a price differential compared to what we would have paid to the vendor. So it really depends in the life cycle from a need and cost point of view.
So actually, this is interesting actually, because all the time you have to keep the doors open actually about what will be next, because you cannot look yourself in with some vendor, and the conditions are changing actually year by year. You'll find different vendors later on and something like this. So you need to have the contract actually very innovative, let's say, and have it in a manner that can allow flexibility for the time. Do you agree on that, Mohammed?
Yeah, okay. Correct, because the industry is moving very fast.
Yes, exactly. Okay, thank you very much. Now let's go, Mr. Hisham. Actually, for you, you have multiple business cases and actually implemented. So how you calculate the ROI for these, and how you deal with the vendors when you choose such vendor? Yani, are you happy with the vendors you choose? Is there some lessons learned from the method that you have selected the vendors and you have applied it?
Yes, thank you, Mohammed. Now, looking into the vendors, when we did the first proof of concept, we screened a couple of the big names in the market. Although our experience, the market has a very much fragmented RPA solutions. That means that you have sometimes a small scale RPA solution, sometimes a very large scale RPA solution. Usually from our enterprise perspective, we prefer, of course, to buy rather than build our own RPA. That will take us extensive resources, and we'll try to avoid this. So you think about this, you have, example, an RPA that runs maybe $10,000 annually. So this is your RPA cost. So you take this and compare it to what exactly you'd like to achieve in terms of a process execution. Now, there are two types of RPAs. Either you have a very large scale project that has, let's say, many opportunities for a couple of RPAs to work, and this will give you a very good ROI. But of course, until you get to exactly this use case, you'll have to do a really good research to avoid any kind of extra cost that will take out the profit from these kind of opportunities. And then you got this kind of repetitive projects that go within, let's say, a couple of solutions. And it's all about the economy of scale. So if you got small RPAs running for a couple of initiatives, it gives you a good ROA. Or in the other case, if you have a large RPA project and very much efficient and managed, it will give you also a good RPA outcomes. Now, the case we mentioned earlier that we had some efficiency that we gathered from the example of the electricity bill. So taking this example, we look into the productivity that goes from, example, if it's a human, it's like 9 hours, then it becomes 24 hours and of course 7 days a week. Lead time is reduced from average, minimum is 15 minutes, and this is to 5 minutes. So the overall cost in this example was about $200,000, including specifically the manpower and other solution activity. And it will be compared to about 40,000 in this example for the RPA project. So here you could save in this example about $160,000. It is important to really have a use case validated for your organization, and instead of really jumping into an RPA with the lack of vision, with the lack of ROI, it will really put you in a very probably not a good position. So recommendation, calculate the use case, identify a good use case, specifically those repetitive tasks that can be eliminated by an RPA, and you should have a solid return of investment. Thank you.
Okay, great. So let's take, for example, the utility bills actually. How much time you consume in analyzing the case and planning for the case?
Yeah, so utility bill as a project, if I do a deep dive, we had challenges actually. You have to understand also RPA is fixed on a certain pattern. Certain pattern means I'm expecting to receive an invoice by email. I'm expecting the RPA to kick in. So we have to create what we call triggers. In case these triggers fail, then it will inform a human, and this is the human intervention, that this RPA is not working. So we had to validate every step in terms of a process, from invoice gathering to invoice payment to validating that this is paid as well. So somehow it is slightly what we call a guided RPA. However, we could still fine-tune this to become completely automated from A to Z.
Okay, great, very nice. Let's go to Mr. Khaled actually. Mr. Khaled, you have automated plenty of business processes in Al-Jazira. So I need you to tell us about 2 cases and how you calculate the ROI and how you choose a vendor and how do you make it like a partnership with win-win situation, or how you tackle such activity.
Thank you, Mohammed, again. Mohammed, and I will go directly to the very interesting part in your questions, which is the ROI calculation, and then we'll go direct, and I will go back to the other part of your questions. So calculating the ROI is the most important task in the RPA journey, because this is your success key to measure that you have success or not in your projects. So calculating the ROI, there are few elements, or let's say few pillars that you should consider. The first thing is the efficiency of the process, that calculating the man hours multiplied by the workload of this process. And we have to consider one thing in such organization is international organization has some offices in across global the world. So they have to consider that demand ratio in the different regions. The second thing is cost avoidance, and we call it in some other terminology the hidden cost. And we mean by that the added staff to this process, the contracting, the internal IT investment in terms of building the APIs, the interfaces, as well as the integration between the systems. As well as also the project management cost. This is what we call it by the hidden cost of the projects. The third thing, which is the most important thing, which is the audit. And interesting of this part, that the audit or compliance, when they come to you to do the audit exercise, they think that they cannot audit you due to the robots are working and there is no auditing tool, there is no auditing module in the RPA technologies. And when we share with them normally the audit logs, where it is describing every single task, how it is performed, and with all the evidence, when we also as well as the time when it is performed, when it is finished, all the audit elements that require to do their audit exercise, and then you gain the challenge with them. And you convert from unaudit me to other mode, which is you call continuously auditing me. The other element, we call it the accuracy. And as all of us knows that by nature, humans are making mistakes, some of them due to natural and unnatural mistakes. And for the different circumstances, however, the artificial intelligence technology has made to eliminate the human errors and the human mistakes up to the minimum. And with some cases, it could reach up to 100% ratio. This is a good entrance to the other part of your question, Mohammed, where how you select your partner. And we should consider, as my colleague HESHAM said in his speech, that the other part, which is this partner will be supporting me to deliver this project in my environment? Does he has experience in my field or not? Does he has experience in banking or telecommunications sector, retail sectors? All this is very important to select your partner. And you cannot do that before you do your proof of value exercise, your proof of concept exercise carefully. And also the partner selection criteria carefully, beside of the other part, which is the technical part. Thank you, Mohammed.
Okay, great. Actually, this is a great insight. Actually, because everyone, there is no size fits all. Actually, but everything needs to be planned very carefully, and that's what we understand from these stories. Actually, from you, from Mr. HESHAM, and from Mohammed, and also what about you, Mr. IMRAN? Actually, you are now planning for a lot of RPA tools, especially after COVID-19. So while you are planning this, how you are considering your vendors, how you are planning to choose the vendors, and how you plan to like the change orders that might expected, how you'll manage and handle these. Can you give us some insights, please?
Sure. We have identified some processes in real time, which have real-time use cases in pharma, like clinical trials are there, which needs very close feedbacks from the end users and from the practitioners, health practitioners. So there are live use cases with us, and we are closely observing it, and we find a great value addition through RPA and AI in these processes. For example, if any new trial is conducted, a lot of coordination is needed between various company systems like R&D, quality, and other supply chain partners are involved. So the feedback is very important in this one, and collecting all these feedback and structuring it is quite time consuming and repetitive sort of work. So we have use cases where a company Cognizant has implemented some cases there, and they are working greatly, and they have produced marvelous results, especially reduce the cost and improve the efficiency. Especially in COVID and post-COVID situation also, these automations, once done in one process of pharma, they can be very easily copied and adjusted, applied for other processes of pharma. For example, this clinical trial can, the process, automated processes in clinical trial can be used for collecting pharmacovigilance feedback from all the stakeholders. Similarly, we have seen that there is a surge in such situations like COVID. There is a surge of having a quick response from the pharma companies. So doctors, patients, even other health professional organizations, they need very quick response on the result of some test, on the results and calibration of certain testings. So based on human, we may exercise some sort of delays, but RPA-based solutions are gearing up and producing results in a more faster way. So we have opportunities in pharma and use cases, but at the same time, we have challenges because bots may fail. We know this, bots may fail. And as well, they need to be continuously improved and continuously validated. So challenges are there, but at the same time, use cases ensure us that even in pharma, where human intervention is needed at every stage, we can easily deploy RPA along the whole supply chain cycle of pharma.
That's really interesting, actually, because maybe you have additional dimension related to the doctors and the middle layers. I think you are dealing, first of all, real time, and you have a lot of middle layers in your business. So this is very interesting because it's not in every place, actually. Sometimes you can wait or something. So it's a really interesting case. So how you are utilizing this in case of real cases, especially, and in the middle, when you are getting feedback from doctors, from the field, how you handle this exactly?
A generally point is that bots are being prepared, bots are there already, and I mean, like we are studying a partner, Cognizant, who has conducted 300 plus tests with the doctors for finding any adverse effect in a product. So how bots are replying and consolidating all the data which is captured against any incident in pharma products, and the collating of this data, analyzing data, and communicating data. These all are very regulated requirement. We need to submit it to all stakeholders, including government regulatories. So collecting these information from different channels, organizing and reporting in a very official way, in a very regulated way, and keep following it until a final decision is taken. So there are bots available, just we need to contextualize it according to our company, according to our infrastructure, and we need to continuously monitor it and upgrade it. So this is the challenge. We are working on it now, and the implementation of these use cases across the world is very promising, that it can be easily adopted in our company and in other pharma sectors as well.
Really interesting, actually. Actually, we are just trying to close out. We have a few minutes left on, so we need to take some questions or to answer some questions, actually. So the first question I need to ask to Mr. Mohammad is, how do you see the future of RPA? Is it continuing, is it progressing, or there is AI tools that will be taking the scene? So how you see it?
Yeah, I feel there's a general trend for more automation. The RPA, as I mentioned, is a way to automate the front end where you cannot automate the back end. And automating the front end for tasks that are repetitive, as Mr. HESHAM mentioned, that are very structured, very clear. There's not a lot of judgment that needs to happen, which is what the industry is doing right now. As you start increasing in the complexity and sophistication and in the decision making, where you're just not just copy pasting or just following a a simple flow chart, then we need to bring more machine learning. Then we need to do much more feature engineering. Then we need to bring more scores. Mentioned the example of LTV prediction, churn prediction, intent, what the customer might want to do. Is the customer stuck or not? Preferences, user preferences, personalization, recommendation. A lot of, like, there was the one of the panel, there was this title from from 1 click to 0 click. This 0 click being preemptive and being predictive is where you need AI in this. So as you try to really move the needle on the personalization and the customer experience, you need to digest data and monetize data much more effectively and much more in a much more targeted way. Then you need to move. You start from RPA as a one building block, but you start moving in other directions where you're either optimizing cost efficiency, you're either improving the customer experience and personalization and the recommendation, or you're also reducing risk in the business and the operation.
Okay, interesting. Now, Mr. HESHAM, how you manage in details, actually, because of course there is some challenges, or I mean, there's some modifications coming in the utility bills, for example, or anything. So how you handle such kind of activities?
Yes. So you think about this RPA and AI in general, the nature is very much experimental. So this is versus the traditional software we work with. Traditional software, we could identify the bugs easily, we could do quality cycles. But here we are relying on somehow what we call machines. So it's something that every, let's say, every 1 month, 2 months, we do a specific review about how things are running good, what are potential opportunities for improving. So this is how we kind of look into the improvement process. So if it's more like experimental, you have to always think about fine-tuning this from stage to stage until you come to what we call an idealist stage that you are comfortable with. Once that is achieved, then you could move probably to the next RPA project.
Great, great, that's great. So from Mr. Khaled, how you deal with the challenges or with fairness, because there's a lot of regulations coming every day. So how you manage your RPA to be fine?
Definitely, managing the RPA environment is very, let's say, important exercise where we have to manage the platform itself. You have to manage the change. You have to also be applicable to manage the demand that coming on. Technology is very supportive to manage and to monitor. There are so many modules that helps you to identify where is the issues and how you fix it, and also as well to monitor the process, your robots, how they are performing, how many errors they are identifying, how is the percentage of your success processes, how is the percentage of the failed processes. So technology, of course, is supporting you to manage all the changes in your automation journey.
Great. Imran, you have 1 minute only. This is the last minute in the panel. So how you see the future for RPA in the pharma sector while you are planning your journey?
See, as we observe that data is said to be the new oil for the business. So we need to structure these data into quality info to first sustain in the business. This is the only way to sustain in the business, and then to remain competitive by taking timely informed decisions. So RPA is there, RPA will stay there along with AI, and that is the only way to survive further.
Okay, very nice. Actually, this is we are totally in agreement that AI is staying. There is a lot of movements, but it's staying, and we are depending more and more on this. So by this, we are closing this panel. Thank you all for being here, and thanks for Trescon for inviting us, and hope it add a lot of value for the audiences. Back to you,
Mohammad.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the entire panel. Thank you for giving us your valuable time today. Thank you so much.